Chaps, we're going to talk about something what we don't ever talk about via MANUP or rarely talk about, and that is the topic of suicide. And to be frank, we always welcome fundraisers, we really do. But what saddens us as a charity is, well, I guess it's obvious, isn't it, Steve? Is some of the people who help out financially are mums and spouses who have lost somebody.
Who are left with the fallout.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like it's played on my mind for well, it has to. We've had many conversations about this, mate, isn't it?
We have, yeah,
It's
loads
just
of
like
times.
how it just feels offensive just to say thank you. It really does. So we thought, do you know what? Let's twin up with Phil from SOBS, which is Survivors of Bereavement by Suicide. Is that right, Phil?
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Do you want to give us a bit of an intro of you and your charity? Because I know you do fantastic stuff. Unfortunately, I don't mean how that sounds, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a real double-edged sword, isn't it? We'd rather not exist, but we are the only national charity that provides peer support for adults who've been bereaved or impacted by a suicide loss. Just to give you a little bit of insight about who we are and where we came from, we started in April 1991.
Wow.
So we'll be 32
Okay.
years old
Wow.
this year. We're a registered charity in England, Wales, and Scotland. And we deliver peer support to adults bereaved or impacted by suicide, to try and break the stigma and the isolation that people feel when they've lost somebody to suicide. Our founder lost her brother to suicide back in 91. I think it was actually in 90. It took a few months to get the group going. And she did then what would be a natural thing. She put an advert in the personals ad of the local newspaper in Hull, which is where she lived. And she gathered together a few people who were like-minded, who'd also lost people to suicide, and hadn't found any support. And they got together in a front room, and that was the first ever SOBS peer support group.
So
And
essentially they were just supporting each other.
Yep,
really,
which is all that we do.
Yeah, with no training or experience or anything like that.
No.
Really, just sitting there chin wagging over a cup of tea, kind of thing.
Absolutely, it was almost.
Okay.
I mean, knit and natter is one of the popular things now. Walk and talk, and it was the same thing. They sat down and had a cup of tea, and just chatted. And since that very small beginning, we've developed now to be this huge charity, huge in the way of volunteers. 314 volunteers at the moment.
Goodness me, wow.
Another 68 needing training, another 46 going through application process. So,
fantastic
by
that you got
by
that
the
amount
end of the year, we'll have
But dreadful that you need that number of people.
It's horrifying.
We've got 70 peer support groups around the country at the moment.
Wow.
And we're expanding all the time. I look after the north of the country, so anything from the Watford Gap north, and we have another lady who looks after the south of the country. And yeah, we're planning to open at least 3 peer support groups in every county. However, the problem is, and this isn't an advert for recruitment drive for volunteers, all of our volunteers have to be adults. They have to have been bereaved by suicide, and it has to be at least 2 years ago, so that they can talk relatively freely about their loss.
Okay.
So it makes it difficult for us to recruit. But we feel that we don't want to loosen those standards. It's important that there is a connection between the people that come to the group and those that facilitate it, and that's how peer support works, by having that lived and living experience. So we've gone on now, say over 300 volunteers, a vast majority of them bereaved by suicide. There are some that do some fundraising for us that are not. And we have many different services now. So we're not just the face-to-face peer support groups once a month. there are lots of options for people should they want to should they want to get some support and actually talk to other people who have been bereaved by suicide. And then you can talk openly, you can talk freely, you're not going to traumatize somebody because they've been through a similar experience and they understand. We call it grief with the volume turned up. It's a very powerful emotion. There's lots of anger, lots of guilt associated with a bereavement by suicide. And so we try and put as many bits of support in as we possibly can. We have a national support line, which is open. It's open 2 days a week at the moment, Mondays and Tuesdays, 9 till 5. And we're hoping that it will open for more time shortly, perhaps a little bit later on this year when we've got some more volunteers trained. We have an email support team. So they'll have a one-to-one conversation across email, which is obviously a very non-threatening way of getting in contact with people. It's easy-ish to type an email, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to get replies and things. Whereas if you have to speak to somebody on the phone or step through the door of a group, that can be quite a daunting experience.
And very emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
there's lots of tears at our group.
Yeah, and I think particularly at a time when people feel so, dare I say, hopeless, I suppose, really, and questioning as to what's going on. To write an email, you can write a paragraph and then go, no, that's not really kind of what I'm trying to say. Go back, delete it, rewrite it. Whereas if you're talking to somebody, bang, I mean, the whole lot just comes out in one flood, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have some emails. The email support team is one of the ones that I support as a paid member of staff for the charity. I look after them, and sometimes they just get one-liners that come in, say, "I'm devastated. I lost my partner to suicide last week. Help me."
Yeah,
and
okay.
and that's enough just to initiate that conversation.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And we can point people towards the telephone line when they're ready to chat with somebody over the phone. And then if we've got a group in the area, we can point them towards one of those groups. And 7 of our groups also operate video conferencing, so Zoom, effectively, support groups once a month. So anybody that's anywhere in the country can actually access support via Zoom. It's not quite as good as face-to-face type support, but in areas where we're underrepresented or just some people don't want to go out at night, some people can't drive, public transport might not be convenient, there are options
and
available
it's better than nothing
people
at potentially a critical stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, during the pandemic, we had 34 groups which were operating across Zoom, so we kept giving support all that time. And
it's amazing.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of specialist groups as well. So one is particularly relevant to this conversation, in that we've got a group which we call Bereavement. So we capitalise the MEN at the end, and it's a men's only service.
Okay.
So any men that want to come and discuss their bereavement in a single gender environment can do that, and you don't have to be the big tough man. We get lots of tears and lots of tantrums and what have you. There's no need to try and be tough there, because it's you don't have to look after the ladies, which is what we're kind of genetically and sort of brought up to do, isn't it? Be the big strong man and man up, which we know is not a good thing.
That's why we've got a question mark.
Absolutely.
There's not a disclaimer on that one. Yeah.
Then we also have a Punjabi speaking women's group for people that speak Punjabi. We've got just in development at the moment is a Polish speaking Zoom group. And so we've got quite a lot. We've also got a global forum. So on our website, you can sign up to our forum, and people come on there from all over the world and just give and receive support. There's over 5,000 people on there posting regularly. And we've also got on our website, we've got support booklets which people can download, or you can order copies. Information about books. We've got films. We've got lots of poetry. All sorts of things that can be of support to people.
So
You
can I just
mentioned
ask you one thing?
yeah, sorry, go on, Dan. Yeah.
No, so at what stage do people? Because just from my experience, yet again, I've spoken to spouses and mums at quite a few times. At what stage do they approach you?
It's really variable.
Right, okay.
It depends on how good the support is in their local area. So there should be in their local area, there should be something called an immediate postvention support service. So immediately after they've lost somebody to suicide, they should be put in contact with a service, a charity in all probability, that can help them straight away. And normally they should be contacted within 72 hours.
Who puts them down that road though, Phil?
Normally the police or the coroner.
Okay.
It depends on the system. We have something called real-time suicide surveillance, which is generally run by the police, so that the police will normally go out to any sudden death, which is unexplained, and a suspected suicide would come down that line. So they should, if it's working properly, they can tick a box on their report form, and that will do a referral through to the charity that's paid for in the locality. And that charity will normally give emotional and practical support to families, normally up to around about inquest time, which is at the moment, is, if it's a fairly straightforward inquest, it's about 4 to 6 months. And then after that sort of time, that charity needs to clear its caseload almost, and because there's always people coming on board. So then they look to where they can signpost people over. So a lot of people come to us just around about inquest time, just before or just after inquest. But I've had people come to the bereavement group, which runs on a Tuesday, and the person had lost their partner on the Friday before.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So that's soon. It's not necessarily a good idea to come that early, but we never turn anybody away.
No, of course you don't.
And all of our services everything's free, and it's all open-ended as well. So often people stay with us for a couple of years until they start to feel a little bit better, that they can cope a little bit better. And then they kind of drift away, but they keep in touch with us, and around the anniversary of the death, or the birthday, or around Christmas time, there's lots of other emotions and feelings that come up around those times. So they might just pop back to the group for a couple of months and just get a little bit of additional support. Yeah, just to tide them over that anniversary time, that first, because there are so many firsts, and you can even get firsts, many years after. So one of the common ones is the first grandson is born, or first grandchild is born.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, so and so will never see their grandchild, or they'll never get to know their grandchild.
Yeah, and I guess they don't have anybody to or they don't feel that they have anybody to share that experience with.
No, because there is so much emotion around with a suicide loss. The people that are most closely associated with that individual tend to shield other people from their feelings, so they tend to withdraw and almost self-isolate for fear of traumatizing others. And other people as well, it's been taboo for so long. I mean, it was a crime until 61 to take your own life. The Church of England, only about 5 or 6 years ago, relented and said that someone that had died by suicide could have a full Christian burial and be buried in the main part of the churchyard. Previously, they were secluded in the northern side, something that's not commonly known.
Wow.
And because of this isolation, and the taboo and everything that goes with suicide. Friends stop calling, stop talking to people. Some of our members even report that people will cross the road so they don't have to talk to them because they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And they don't really.
Just going quickly back on that, and the only reason I see that is I was given a cancer diagnosis in 2017, and that became, you know, sort of fairly well known in my circle of friends and huskies and all the rest of it. And it's funny how people react, because some people come up, throw their arms around you and go, shit, you know, how can I help? You know, what can I do? You know where I am and all the rest of it. And other people completely avoid you simply because they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So I fully empathize with what you're saying there. It's just a bizarre situation.
Yeah, and it's really bad, and it just, you know, people become more and more isolated on a time that they're hurting themselves. And we know that around about 6% of people who suffer a suicide bereavement will go on to try and take their own lives, you know, because they feel so desperate, so you know, so helpless and hopeless. And if they don't get some support, then they go on, you know, to be another part of this tragedy. So what we try and do is try and support people through it and show them that, you know, we have our facilitators. One couple that we have who facilitate with us have been volunteering with us for 22 years. You know, and we can show people that come, newly bereaved people, that there is a way through this. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's a tough journey, and you'll never be the same again. But you can get through it with the support of the people that you meet at SOBS. And there's many friendships. We've got one couple. They met at a SOBS group, and they're now a couple. They both lost significant others to suicide. And over the course of the group, they've become friendly, and, you know, they know that they both understand each other, and they're now
absolutely
a couple.
Yeah, that's key.
You know,
that is absolutely key in that relationship.
Can I just ask one thing now? I'm going to be careful what I say. There has been a couple of calls where I've spoken to. I'll say person rather than a relationship, because of that thing. They've used the term shame.
Used the term what? Sorry.
Sorry, they've used they've described that they feel quite shameful about it.
Yeah, this is because of the stigma that's attached to it. I mean, some religions still see suicide as a sin.
Yeah.
Some people will do everything that they can to hide that their loved one has died by suicide. The most common thing they say, "Oh, we died of a heart attack," where actually they've died by suicide. And even some close members of the family may not know the actual thing that's happened, because there is so much taboo and stigma associated with suicide. As I said, it was a crime until 1961, and that's why you still hear today of people having committed suicide. That's a term that we don't use. We use much prefer you know, taking their own life or died by suicide, because nobody commits a crime and you know, when they take their own life, and it's just that connotation, really. And we work with the police as much as we can to have it, you know, the scene of the death is not a crime scene, you know, as it often gets referred to. And yeah, it's very difficult to try and change organizational mentality, but it's one of the things that we try and do.
Well, so just before we draw to a close, then, obviously I'm just looking at that time and try not to make it obvious. But can I ask you two questions then? The first question: if somebody's watching this and they're, well, let's say how it is that they've just recently lost somebody or something like that, what would you tell them to do?
If they contact us in some way, shape, or form, we will try and support them through our groups. And if they haven't had any signposting to the local support service, we will try and do that. And the easiest way probably to get into contact is through our website, which is www.uksobs.org. They can just go on our website. There's loads of stuff there. There's a little button at the top that says find a support group. Click on that, find your local support group, and that support group will have an email address and a telephone number. So you don't even have to speak to somebody. You can email them and be in contact with somebody close by that can help.
Oh, okay. No, thank you for I'll do the whole taggy stuff on social medias for you anyway.
Cool.
And the second question really, how do you keep your head straight? You must hear story after story after story. How do you not let that? How do you deal with that?
So for our volunteers, we've got quite a lot of self-care in place. We always have a team of 3, so that they can always debrief at the end of the night. We just do one night a month, so that it's not too much for them.
That's good.
I do some of the supervision for some of the volunteers. The volunteers also attend groups, other groups, either Zoom or face-to-face, so they can go for them rather than as being facilitators. And we also have supervision periods, so counselling type periods, where we can unload anything that we've done, and we pay for that for our volunteers if they need to. And there is also a charity now called Suicide and Co. So it's Suicide and Co. CO. You can Google search them, and they're doing free suicide bereavement counselling. So that's another avenue that's open.
Right. Okay. No. Thank you very much for that. Again, I'll do the whole taggy stuff and stuff like that. So, Steve, have you got anything to say just before we draw to a close, or?
No, I don't think I have. No, I mean, thank you very much, Phil, for coming on and sharing this with us, because I think it's as Dan said right at the outset, suicide isn't something that we discuss, because MANUP really is kind of there to grab people and signpost people before we get to that stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously we see the fallout from that.
Yeah.
And that gets communicated to us, and obviously, I mean, it's very upsetting, and especially when, and I know Dan's had a couple of phone calls which where he's got on the blower to me directly afterwards, and he's just stunned. It's just awful. But so thank you very much for doing the video, because I think this is something that we can put out where people don't have to necessarily ring us or call us or send a message, but there's something there that will they can sit, watch, and get some direction from.
Well,
yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Yeah, well, it just sits with our goal, isn't it? Is that most of our videos aren't designed to give advice. We don't give advice. We always highlight somebody else's story. And you know what? If somebody watches this and they're like, I'm ready to contact SOBS, I'm ready to do something now, then the whole video is worth it.
Yeah, or maybe they've just slipped through the system and not got the signposting that they need.
And it does happen
because
the signposting that the police do, even when it works really well, it's limited to close family.
Okay.
For friends and work colleagues who are just as much affected, they won't be referred into those services.
Okay.
So it'll just go to the next of kin.
Very valid point.
So what they reckon is that 135 people are affected by every suicide. So that's the 10 or so close people, close family members, and then a whole range of other people, friends, work colleagues, people that go to sports clubs, football teams.
Yeah, see them in the pub, social
yeah, absolutely,
events,
absolutely. People that are still deeply affected by the loss of that person. So those won't be contacted by those immediate services, but we are happy to help them.
No, because they're unknowns, I suppose, effectively, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, well, thank you so much for your time. Really, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let me do the stop record thing. There we go.